In the global markets, there still isn't much competition for Samsung when it comes to foldable phones. In some places, there are some nice alternatives coming out though, like Xiaomi's new Mix Fold 3. This phone is meant for the Chinese market, but what sorts of innovations can be found here, and could it be a better device than the Z Fold 5? I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's find out in our Xiaomi Mix Fold 3 review. The Mix Fold 3 is a foldable phone similar in size to a typical smartphone, but when unfolded it reveals a larger inner screen. It's perhaps the slimmest of these sorts of devices out there, just 5.3mm thick when opened up, and weighs in at 255 grams. Our Mix Fold 3 has an interesting textured back which looks and feels like vegan leather, but is actually made of glass, believe it or not. It provides good grip and hides smudges. One eye-catching accent is the Leica branding on the camera bump. The frame of the phone is made of aluminum, and the phone overall feels elegant and sturdy. The Mix Fold is a lot thinner than the Z Fold 5, and this is quite noticeable in hand, both while the phone is closed and when it's opened up. But a strike against the Mix Fold is that it doesn't have official ingress protection, while the Z Fold 5 is rated at IPX8 against water. The Mix Fold 3 brings a new hinge mechanism, which should be more durable than the one on the previous Mix Fold 2. The new hinge allows the Mix Fold 3 to stay open at different angles, which is useful for certain tasks. For example, you can watch a YouTube video like you would on a laptop, and the controls will separate onto the bottom half. Another use case is with the cameras. You can stabilize the phone on a table or desk and control the cameras on the bottom half of the screen. The cover display of the Mix Fold 3 is a 6.56-inch OLED with a 1080p resolution, Gorilla Glass Victus 2 protection, and a 120Hz refresh rate. It's wider and a lot more comfortable to use than the Z Fold 5's, with its taller and narrower aspect ratio. When you open the Mix Fold 3, there's the main 8.03-inch foldable LTPO OLED, with a 1916 by 2160 resolution and a 120Hz refresh rate. When open, the Mix Fold has a larger screen than the Z Fold, though it has a punch hole for the selfie cam, while the Z Fold hides under the display. Both the Mix Fold's inner screen and the cover screen have HDR10+ video and Dolby Vision support. There's great contrast, and the colors can be very accurate too, depending on the color settings you dial in. The Mix Fold 3's crease where the panel folds over doesn't look or feel quite as pronounced as the Z Fold's. However, the Mix Fold is missing stylus support, which is a big plus for the Z Fold's inner display. The brightness of the Mix Fold 3's inner display is excellent. We measured a maximum of nearly 600 nits with the manual brightness slider, and this can boost up to almost 1300 nits in auto mode when in bright sun. The cover screen maxes out at a little less, but is still great, 550 nits with the slider, and a boost to around 1150 nits in auto mode. Thanks to the 120Hz refresh rate, both the inner and outer screens provide buttery smooth swiping and scrolling. However, only the inner screen is an LTPO one, so it can dial down to 10Hz or even all the way down to 1Hz when idling to save energy. The outer screen can dial down this way as well, but to 60Hz. The Mix Fold 3 has a pair of stereo speakers for audio. They have very good loudness, and the sound quality is good too. Very well balanced, with solid lows and treble and clean vocals. You can listen for yourself through the provided link. The Mix Fold 3 has a side-mounted fingerprint reader built into the power button, standard for these sorts of devices. It's responsive and reliable. And for storage, the Mix Fold 3 can come with 256 or 512 gigs on board, or even a whole terabyte. That's not expandable through microSD though. Being a phone for the Chinese market, the Mix Fold 3 comes with the Chinese version of Xiaomi's MIUI interface. For Western users, it's not a seamless experience out of the box. Besides the many Chinese apps and functions which aren't translated, there are other differences from the global version of MIUI we're familiar with. You're missing certain baked-in features like Google Pay, Android Auto, and Nearby Share, which you can't otherwise install. The multitasking experience is decent here. You can have 2 split-screen apps and multiple floating windows, which can reside in collapsible bubbles. However, you can't resize the split screen ratio at all, and you can't get a horizontal split, both of which you can do on the Galaxy. And finally, to help take advantage of the larger screen space, you get a dock at the bottom which holds plenty of app shortcuts and recent apps. If you'd like to find out more about Xiaomi's MIUI in general, you can check out our dedicated video. The Mix Fold 3 is quite competitive when it comes to the chipset. It packs a flagship-grade Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, and as you'd expect, performance is great here. It's a big improvement over last year's model. And in addition to the higher benchmark scores, the Mix Fold 3 supports newer memory tech, like UFS 4.0 storage and LPDDR5X RAM. The thermal management here is not very good though. We don't have a graphic for you because the Mix Fold 3 couldn't make it through our stress test without overheating and turning off. The battery life, on the other hand, is class-leading. The Mix Fold 3 packs a 4800 mAh battery, larger than last year's model, and was able to score an endurance rating of 117 hours when tested on its inner display. Testing battery life on the cover screen resulted in basically the same score, 118 hours. The Mix Fold 3 supports 67-watt charging, and the charger comes in the box. The charging speed is pretty good. We were able to charge from 0 to 70% in half an hour. And this year there's support for wireless charging too. Another new development this year is a revamped camera system. The Mix Fold 3 has a 50-megapixel main cam, a 10-megapixel 3.2x zoom, a 10-megapixel 5x zoom, and a 12-megapixel ultrawide cam. Thanks to the extra telephoto, that's one additional camera compared to either the Z Fold or last year's Mix Fold 2. By default, the main cam's photos come out at 12.5 megapixels, with the Leica Vibrant color mode enabled. The photos have what we call just the right amount of pop, both in terms of saturation and contrast. The dynamic range is hard to fault either. There's also a great amount of detail, and the rendition of random textures looks quite natural. Because of the foldable form factor, you can take selfies with the rear cameras using the front screen as a viewfinder. These from the main cam look great, with crisp detail, great colors and skin tones, and wide dynamic range. Plus there's some natural background blur to make the subject stand out. Another option for selfies is the 20-megapixel selfie cam embedded within the cover screen. These aren't half bad. The sharpness and dynamic range fall short of the main cameras though. You could also snap a selfie using the front-facing cam within the inner screen, which is identical. Now back to the main camera to talk about low-light shooting. The Mix Fold 3 applies some form of night mode processing in these conditions by default. The detail and sharpness are excellent. The shadows are left fairly dark for a more natural, contrasty look. You can record video with the main cam in up to 8K resolution at 24 FPS. While the look overall is a bit processed and artificial, the colors are pleasant, and the dynamic range is excellent. The 4K footage looks more natural, and there's plenty of detail. The colors and dynamic range are identical to those of the 8K footage. There's support for electronic stabilization, and it does a great job at smoothing out walking, and pans are generally smooth too. In low light, the main camera captures solid 4K videos. It exposes well and has good dynamic range, while also maintaining good color saturation. Now let's have a look at the output of the telephoto cameras. Both the 3.2x and 5x zoomed shots are excellent, with good sharpness and contrast. The 5x zoom does seem slightly noisier, but it's not a big deal. Also, there are minor differences in the colors between the two cameras. In low light, the telephoto cameras deliver sharp and detailed results. Colors are mostly accurate, with only occasional missteps in white balance. Neither of the zoom cameras support 4K video recording. In 1080p, the 3.2x camera captures plenty of detail with natural rendition, and the colors and dynamic range are on point. In a similar fashion, the 1080p clips from the 5x zoom are great too. Finally, we have the ultra-wide camera. Its output is consistent with the main cams in terms of color, with only a hint of extra saturation at times. The contrast is excellent, and the dynamic range is impressive too. In low light, the ultra-wide can deliver solid results, with good exposure, nice color saturation, and dependable white balance. Detail and sharpness are good too. The ultra-wide can shoot video in 4K. The detail is very good, but the footage is a bit more contrasty than ideal, with dark shadows. The colors are also a bit more saturated than the main cams. So that's the Xiaomi Mix Fold 3. Overall, it's quite an impressive flagship foldable. What is missing compared to the Z Fold 5 is waterproofing and stylus support. And of course, it's limited by its Chinese software and availability. Still, it beats the Z Fold when it comes to the thin design, the size of the inner screen, the battery life, and the charging, and you even get an extra telephoto zoom. If it were available worldwide, I'm sure the Mix Fold 3 could give Samsung a run for its money. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're looking for alternatives to the Mix Fold 3, of course, one option is the Galaxy Z Fold 5. Or you could have a look at the Galaxy Z Fold 4. Let us know what you think, and I'll see you on the next one.